Welcome back everyone. We're going to be doing a quick little comparison between the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 8 Plus. Now, both of these phones came out a couple years ago back in 2017, and even though these aren't necessarily like the successors to one another, they're both like pretty different phones. At the core and basically like everything else about these phones, they're almost pretty much the same. But even then, there are still so many differences that especially more than what meets the eye, because most people just assume, oh, the iPhone 8 Plus is just a bigger version of the iPhone 8, even though that used to be the case back in the Plus series like the 6 Plus, the 6S Plus. Ever since the 7 Plus, there's been some pretty key differences between the smaller versions and the bigger versions. So right now, the biggest difference would probably be the price tag. On Amazon, the iPhone 8s are selling for about $225, where the iPhone 8 Plus is selling for about $350. Now, brand new in the Apple Store, both of these phones are substantially cheaper than just the base iPhone 8 that's still being sold, and the iPhone SE, the brand new one, should be coming out fairly soon, and that one could be retailing for $399, but all the way up to $449. So we really don't know which one's going to be which, to be honest. But what I will tell you though is that with the iPhone 8, it is the smaller version, and I think more people might actually end up liking that and choosing that one over the 8 Plus. But again, the price tags of these, the $225 for the iPhone 8, $350 for the 8 Plus. Both of these will be linked down below if you want to pick them up from there, and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, looking on the fronts of both the phones, the iPhone 8 has that 4.7-inch Retina IPS panel. It is a 750p panel, whatever you want to call it. It's not 720p. It's a little bit higher than HD, and the panel itself is pretty decent. You have True Tone display on it, you have Force Touch or 3D Touch, whatever you want to call it. You have Touch ID on the front, and of course there's quite a bit of bezel on it, but compared to the 8 Plus, it has the exact same bezel on it for the most part. And the iPhone 8 screen is pretty good at the end of the day. I never found myself really complaining about it too much, and especially with this type of panel, I think it is actually really decent at the end of the day. The main reason why I like it so much is because it's just such like a basic panel, and all things considered, I would definitely consider it a better panel than, it being not a bad panel. And even though it's not OLED, I really don't even think it's that big of a deal. Where the iPhone 8 Plus has that 5.5-inch Retina IPS panel, and this one is 1080p, and even this panel is actually really good as well. And I would tell you, and I've been saying this for a while, if I looked at the IPS panel on the iPhone 8 and the panel on the iPhone 8 Plus, I don't think I would be able to see like that big of a difference. Like, yeah, there's like a little bit of a difference, but I don't think it's a crazy amount of difference between them. And with the 8 Plus, because it is the bigger panel, it tends to be, a little bit not as high definite or not as crisp as maybe a smaller panel, but the resolution is higher in the 8 Plus, which is perfectly fine. You have a 1080p panel on the iPhone 8 Plus. And again, like I said, you have Force Touch, True Tone, all that stuff. And like I said before, even though it doesn't have an OLED panel, it's still a very good panel because it does have that True Tone technology, which adds just a little bit of warmth to the color, which is really nice. Now, for me personally, I've always liked a bigger phone, so I would probably end up siding with the iPhone 8 Plus. Even though there's not a gigantic difference between the way the panels look, I kind of do think maybe the 8 Plus looks a little bit better. If one had to look better, it would definitely be the iPhone 8 Plus. But again, I don't think one totally blows the other one out of the water. Both have lightning ports on the bottom. Both have glass backs with wireless charging, which is really cool. Now, another huge thing to consider are the camera sensors on the back. Now, the iPhone 8 has a single camera setup, the iPhone 8 Plus has a dual camera setup, and I'll get into both in a second, like, the quality and all that stuff. But I will tell you, and I've been running with this for a long time, I would always recommend getting a phone that has multiple camera setups than one that just has a single camera, even if the quality might be a little bit worse on the 8 Plus, which it's not, it's better by a little bit. But even if the quality was just slightly worse, I would rather still pick up more camera sensors than just have a single camera setup. And it might make perfect sense to a lot of you guys, but I'm sure for a lot of people you would still probably pick up a single camera setup. Trust me, dual camera setups or triple or quadruple, whatever you can get, are always going to future-proof you a little bit more, in my opinion. Now that we have all that stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the software. Now, they both have IP67 dust and water resistance, which is really cool. And in terms of the outside, that really pretty much covers it. Like I said, the iPhone 8 Plus, in my opinion, is already looking out to be like the better priced phone and the better value phone, and just a better phone altogether. But again, the iPhone 8 is a cheaper phone, and it actually might be the better value. Now that we have all that stuff out of the way, let's go and hit on the software. Both of them are going to be getting the exact same software versions, which is a really good thing. They both started off with iOS 11. Right now, they're both on iOS 13.4.1, which was just released a couple days ago. And I personally do think that both phones are going to be probably getting an extra version of software software towards the end of their life cycle, mostly because the iPhone 10, in my opinion, is probably going to be getting that extra version. And because of that, it kind of makes me assume that this one might. Now, again, I don't know. That's just kind of an assumption. But if I had to lean one way or the other, I'd probably end up saying that the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus will be lasting for a very, very long time. You can get either of these phones now and still be perfectly fine for the next couple of years out of these things, which is a really, really cool thing. Now, another huge thing to consider, like I've stated before, that checkra jailbreak that came out not too long ago, just a couple months ago, whatever, that is one of the coolest things about this phone for sure. Either of these phones, you can pick the iPhone 8 or the iPhone 8 Plus. Both of these phones are supported with that jailbreak, which is a really, really awesome thing. And that's one of my favorite things about these devices and these older ones. There's not a lot of phones out there, especially with the newer ones, that are so easily to be modded, whether that's an Android phone or an iOS phone. So for sure, at the end of the day, I would always consider, if you have to modify your phone, if you're going to do it, pick up an older iPhone. Those are so much easier to mod than all these other newer phones just in general. So for sure, at the end of the day, these ones and software are going to be not only lasting for a long time, but are also going to last a long time when it comes to modding and just jailbreaking capability, which is really, really cool. So that really pretty much covers it up there. Now, hitting on the performance aspect, they both have Apple A11 Bionic chips, hexa-core CPUs, but the difference comes in the RAM. So the iPhone 8 has two different models, the 64 and 256 gig model, and so does the 8 Plus, but the iPhone 8, both models have 2 gigs of RAM, where the iPhone 8 Plus has 3 gigs of RAM. So already there, we're already kind of seeing some differences. We're getting 50% more RAM on the iPhone 8 Plus than on the iPhone 8. Now, on an every day-to-day basis, if your usability and use case is pretty slim, then you're probably not going to see those big of differences. I don't think you're really going to care that much. But what I would tell you though is that there are some big differences when you're going from 2 to 3 gigs of RAM, especially if you're kind of going to compare it to these newer iPhones. And what's crazy is I compared my iPhone 8 Plus and my iPhone 8 to my iPhone 11, and the iPhone 11 is supposedly one of the fastest iPhones right now, and I think the iPhone 11 pretty much beat the 8 and 8 Plus in every single comparison. But the craziest differences came in the RAM management portion. So the iPhone 8 was pretty much, standing behind the iPhone 11 every time. It wasn't as fast as it. But the iPhone 8 Plus, I just compared them again the other day, and the iPhone 8 Plus was pretty much able to beat the iPhone 11 in a couple times in the RAM management test. So loading up the apps and then opening them back up when you loaded a bunch of them. And the iPhone 8 Plus was able to keep more in the background, which is pretty cool. So in my opinion, I think the performance day to day, if you're just checking Snapchat and things like that, I don't really think it's going to be that crazy. I think you're going to be perfectly fine. But if you're trying to get the most amount of power from you, the most amount of dollar value, I think the iPhone 8 Plus is probably the best way to go. There's only like 1 extra gig of RAM on the newer iPhones than on the iPhone 8 Plus. So in my opinion, I would probably say the iPhone 8 Plus is a very good performing phone and might end up being a better value per dollar than the iPhone 8 for sure, just in terms of that. Now, hitting on the camera, like I stated before, single camera setup on the iPhone 8, dual camera setup on the iPhone 8 Plus, 12 megapixel sensors on all these sensors. But on the iPhone 8 Plus, you have a telephoto lens, which is really, really cool. Now, ultimately, I'd rather have an ultra-wide, but if it was between just a single camera or a dual camera, like I said it before, a dual camera setup will always do you much better. So in my opinion, I would rather pick up the iPhone 8 Plus camera. You're getting not only those cool little setups like the telephoto lenses and all those things, you're getting 4K 60 on both phones, but you're also getting portrait mode on the iPhone 8 Plus, where you don't have it on the iPhone 8. And nowadays, that's just kind of like a bare necessity. That's just something that like all phones come with nowadays. So that's something really, really cool that the iPhone 8 Plus has that the iPhone 8 does not have. On the front, 7 megapixel sensors on both, and again, one doesn't really blow the other one out of the water here, but still, in my opinion, the iPhone 8 Plus has the better camera setup for sure. And even kind of forecasting to the 11 Pro, the 11 Pro can only do 4K 62, so even if you only pick the iPhone 8 up, it's still a very good camera at the end of the day, and you can probably get a lot of those other features from jailbreak tweaks or just apps in the App Store as well, so it's really up to you. But in my opinion, the iPhone 8 Plus is probably the better camera here for sure. Now, ending it off with the battery life, a 1,821 mAh battery on the iPhone 8, but a 2,691 mAh battery on the iPhone 8 Plus. And like I've stated before, dude, I would always pick up a bigger battery than a smaller battery. And the battery on the iPhone 8 isn't even that bad. Standby time is pretty good on both of these, but I do believe that the iPhone 8 Plus does have the better advantage here with having that 2,691 mAh battery. iOS doesn't require a lot of resources to run. It's not like a power and hungry intensive phone at all, and at the end of it, you don't even need that big of a battery for iOS and iPhones to run perfectly fine. And in my opinion, like I've stated, you have a very good battery life on the iPhone 8 Plus, but still a pretty decent battery on the iPhone 8. So between both of these, the iPhone 8 Plus definitely wins. You have wireless charging on both, which is really, really cool. So ultimately, what I can tell you is that both phones, I think, are pretty strong pickups in 2020. I don't think one really blows the other one out of the water, but I think the iPhone 8 Plus, for what you're getting, especially for only maybe like $100 something upgrade in the price, I think it's worth it to go and update to the iPhone 8 Plus than to get the iPhone 8, in my opinion. However, if you're on a budget, the iPhone 8 is a tremendous value per dollar, especially on Amazon. If you don't want to pay that $449 or whatever it is at the Apple Store, which I don't think it's worth that at all, the iPhone 8 is a very good price per dollar phone, but I would still rather pick up an iPhone 8 Plus, in my opinion, than an iPhone 8 in 2020. So that really pretty much covers it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate if you guys to check it out. More importantly, everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.